agencies that oversee gun laws. So it definitely looks like he's coming out of the gate here a little bit more aggressive than Obama was, and a little bit tilting a little bit more towards the bipartisan. And also, but we're gonna have to keep a close eye on this and how it goes, because as soon as there's always another layer under the onion there with the $2,000 checks. That's great, but there's this. That's what the Democratic Party, like, that's the joy of the Democratic Party there for you. Like, there's always another layer of just like, oh, okay. Like, for example, in the minimum wage, they're going to get the $15 minimum wage, which probably at this point should be at least tied to inflation is arguably, like, really low. And the fact that people are, like, already saying that this is going to be, oh, we're going to push it back to 2027, like, which is like, come on, that is just such a just disappointing and deflating thing when you see that happening in a lot of different areas. Yeah, it's just like, do you think, how are you feeling about like the Biden administration as we get ready for it in the future?
I mean, I'm not too upset, to be honest. I'm pleasantly surprised by some of his ambitions in regards to what he's trying to get passed. Now, in regards to his $15 minimum wage, I think that's going to be a major roadblock. I think he's going to have to either do an executive order or get that done with, because unless Joe Manchin, I mean, look, I know that you disagree whenever anyone says it's a roadblock, but I mean, you got to admit, Spencer, Joe Manchin, it does control the Senate right now. He is a conservative Democrat. He's against a lot of things that, quite frankly, he should be for. West Virginia has some of the lowest poverty, well, not lowest, one of the highest poverty rates in the entire country, yet he's still on the fence with a $15 minimum wage. He didn't say he's against it, but he said he would have to really take a deep consideration into it and see how it would affect his state, which obviously would affect his state quite well. But I think the $15 minimum wage doesn't have to do executive order. I think he doesn't think he's going to have to do it by sneaking it in to a bill. Like, for example, that $15 minimum wage was in the COVID-19 relief bill that he did, on the $1.9 trillion bill that he sent over to Congress a couple days ago. Well, he has drafted up, and some senators already have received it. But I think he doesn't realize that the Republicans he's working with aren't the Republicans he was working with in the early 2000s, late 90s. Like, for example,
and even Lindsey then, Graham. They completely like tore him up. So the things aren't looking very good.
Yeah, but I will say the one thing is that, like, he's not dealing with, like, John McCain Republicans anymore. He's dealing with Trump Republicans, and they're not. Like, Lindsey Graham, he always talks about for some reason. Even though they may have worked together in the past, I can guarantee you they're not going to work together whatsoever nowadays. The agenda differences is incredibly apparent. I mean, it is a massive difference between both the agendas. I mean, quite frankly, I will say a lot of Biden's agendas definitely have turned a little bit more liberal than I would have thought they would have, given, you know, his past record of being relatively centrist and not really too much doing anything of anything. I mean, he basically is just like, let me just go across the aisle and do like whatever they want to do and just make it seem more liberal than it actually is. I mean, that's really basically what he did. But I mean, so far, I'm pleasantly surprised by some of his ambitions and some of his plans, environments, and his environmental plan. I'm very surprised on. I'm quite, I'm pleasantly surprised about. I'm also happy with his appointments to the Department of Interior, Environmental Protection Agency, amongst others, Secretary of Treasury, amongst others. But there's definitely some that. There's some things about him that are a little bit distasteful and leave a little bit of a sour taste in my mouth, like Pete Buttigieg, Buttigieg, as I call him. He's a little nickname I got there for him. In the Department of Transportation makes absolutely zero sense. Actually, Spencer and I were talking about this earlier. The Deputy Transportation Secretary is a former Department of Transportation Secretary for New York City. I mean, it is crystal clear that he put him there to elevate him. Same with Gina Raimondo in the Secretary of Commerce. Absolutely awful governor of Rhode Island. There are definitely things
I think the Gina Raimondo thing makes a lot more sense considering how pro-business she is. Being put in the like a really important position like the Secretary of Commerce would be, I think, very sensible. But the thing with like the biggest justifications that they had for them, like Pete Buttigieg and Biden's team was like, when he was younger, Pete loved to ride the bus. He really appreciated it. That's why he's going to make a great Secretary of Public Transportation. Like, that's the best they had in terms of why he should be a transportation secretary in such an important time. And also, like, a time where there's a lot that could be done with the right Democratic administration in terms of revitalizing actually just vitalizing in the first place a real transportation system in American cities, which is so bad compared to everybody else. So, like, in the fact that they put him there, just like literally everything else on his like resume, like going to the military, for example, is just a complete like career builder, like resume badge kind of thing, and that's it. Just really kind of a perfect thing from the cabinet. But we will now move on to what's going on in the Senate. Senate leaders Chuck Schumer and Mitch McConnell have yet to strike an agreement on how to run an evenly split Senate, and McConnell is driving a hard bargain. No surprise. So, and let's see how the Senate Democrats here cave. They want a majority. They have also an opportunity to possibly maybe give it up. Will it be tempting enough for them to take it? And even, do they need to make this power sharing agreement? Like, James, do they even need to do this?
So actually, I was reading the power sharing agreement. It's actually not anything at all. It's all it states. From what I read, I got a little bit ahead of myself here. Chuck Schumer released a statement. I also read a different article. So when a committee is tied in a vote, the Democrats will have like the win basically in the committee. Mm-hmm. Democrats they will run the committee, they will run the schedule. Chuck Schumer will be the majority leader. That's literally, that was the entire power sharing agreement. Now, just to go back on one other point quickly, I'll get back to this. In regards to Gina Romano, the only thing I don't really care about Gina Romano is she had an awful COVID-19 response in Rhode Island. And yeah, I agree. She has a very pro-business background, but I still would have to disagree that she is someone who she's a lot like the people who. She's like a Ron DeSantis of the North, I think. She's very dumb, but she went to Yale, she went to Harvard, and she went to all these very good top schools. But I don't think she's very intelligent. Yeah, she has a pro-business background. Yeah, she endorsed Bloomberg, this and that. I still don't necessarily think that she's the best for their commerce, but I'm not surprised.
Yeah. I'm not saying like that is a. I'm not saying like that's. Ideally, the pick would have been like someone who's like very supportive of business interests in a place that has, of course, a lot of control over business and regulation and just how the economy moves. And previously, of course, run by Wilbur Ross, who probably as a little bit of an aside, but he may have had the worst COVID like head banging comment. Now that we like know more about it, I think he said like before the shutdown happened, but he's like, I don't want to pat ourselves on the back, but I think this is going to lead to a lot of jobs in America because the Chinese economy will be hurt so badly. Like,
yeah, it's insane.
Just like, oh my goodness, like that is a horrific thing to look back on in video there. So, but anyway, back to the power sharing agreement. It does seem like there will. The good thing is there will be a pretty good chance that the Democrats will be able to win on most things. It's not like now the Republicans have some control of the Senate, like New York under the IDC with Cuomo. Yeah. But now we have a little bit of a hinge point in this agreement, which is the filibuster. So to preserve the legislative filibuster as part of their agreement governing the rules of the 50-50 Senate, McConnell wants Schumer to commit to that. He said while he is taking his cues from the last Senate split in 2001, he also believes we need to address the threats to the legislative filibuster. The time is ripe to address this issue before the passions of one particular issue or another arise. A delay in reaching an argument could delay the final determination of committee assignments, but it is important to maintain the status quo of the legislative filibuster. So what do you make about this? How important is the filibuster, and what should Chuck Schumer do here about this?
Well, the filibuster, in my opinion, I think is actually, I think that it is something that we should keep, but we shouldn't necessarily have it with the powers that we have right now. We definitely need to reform the filibuster. And I think what Chuck Schumer should be doing here is, first off, I believe the number of votes you need to end a filibuster is 60 votes, if I'm correct. I don't know if Mitch McConnell butchered that. He might have, for all I know. Now it might be 50 votes. And I think what they should really do is, if it's not at 50 votes, they should move it to 50 votes to end a filibuster because, we already know what's going to happen. We're going to have Ted Cruz walking in with his little, children's book like he did a while ago.
Yeah, green eggs
reading
and ham.
Stories. It's ridiculous what's going to happen. We know what's going to happen. They're going to pull up anything, and they don't have any arguments against it, so they're just going to filibuster the bill to death. So I think what they got to do is, if Chuck Schumer really should do, is he should focus on making sure that the filibuster votes, the votes that are needed to end the filibuster, are lowered to a feasible amount, which is 50. because then they can end filibusters and get the bills actually moving, because that's what really halts everything in the Senate. And again, we don't want Mitch McConnell to have any power. We won the Senate fair and square, and we don't need that little, turtle to have any more power in the Senate than he's already had for the last 6 years. We see what he's done. He's damaged the country. We don't need him to have any single speck of power ever again for now,
Yeah, that is a very it's a very, very intimidating and very important thing. Like I say, go ahead, but at least you got to change it back before the next election. You got to hold a vote on that to change it. Just put it back in there real quick. That is what you got to do. But I mean, I guess they could just undo it, but that's their prerogative. That's why you got to keep the Senate, and that's what can happen. But I really do think it's going to be hard to get anything done because the obstruction is going to be off the charts. So even if they don't do it right off the bat, they probably will have to at some point because the obstruction is going to be super, super high. Because that's what they did last time. Why not do that, but way, way worse with Joe Biden? All right, so we now do get to change gears and have a little bit of fun because we are talking about Trump. And by the way, before I get into this, I do want to just promo a little bit. Very, very exciting episode this Thursday where we have Donnie Rivetto joining the show to review everything Trump over the last 4 years. Some of the biggest highlights, some of his lasting accomplishments, if you could call them that, and obviously mostly catastrophic failures. For example, the COVID crisis and also some of his just craziest moments from a presidency, really unlike anything else. And yeah, so this is a great piece here from Axios, James, so I do want to get into. President Trump, he was sitting in the Oval Office one day late November when a call came from lawyer Sidney Powell. And he goes, "Ugh, Sidney," he told the staff in the room before he picked it up. "She's getting a little crazy, isn't she? She's really got to tone it down. No one believes this stuff. It's just too much." He put on the call on speakerphone for the benefit of his audience, and Powell was raving about a national security crisis involving Iranians flipping votes in battleground states. Trump pressed mute and laughed and said, "So what are we going to do about it, Sidney?" Trump would say every few seconds, whipping Powell angrier and angrier, and he was completely having fun with it, and just goes, "She really is crazy, huh?" He said, and again putting his finger on the mute button. And it is, again, this really paints a picture of, not just the mental image of that going on is incredibly funny to me, but this really just painted a mental image of Trump just sitting back there, and really what he's doing is stoking the flames that are, encircling our, normal, peaceful transition to power. And that is I think, the perfect state that he's recognizing. It's not like he is a true believer. He's definitely not. He knows he's conning these people out of, their in some cases their literal freedom and their safety, but he doesn't care, and he thinks it's funny, and he thinks it's great.
Yeah, and I think that that was Sidney Powell, correct?
Yeah, Sidney Powell.
Yeah, I don't know if you saw, but she's getting sued by that company. But
yeah, by the Dominion, yeah. Right.
And of course, this whole thing, I mean, it's just insane what happened over the last 3 months with Sidney Powell and with Trump, and even with Rudy Giuliani now saying he won't be the lawyer during the impeachment trial. I mean, there was a lot of craziness going on with this whole thing. And I honestly think that, I mean, it's quite astonishing how she, for example, got away with a lot of the things she was saying. Because, first off, she said during the press conference, don't go out and vote in the Georgia Senate runoff because it will be fraudulent. And there were very little amount of Republicans who came out and said, "No, you're wrong." It was only the Georgia Republicans who came out and said that. And I just thought that was interesting because, she had a lot of power, and Trump didn't say anything. I mean, Trump even, I think, went on Twitter a couple of days before the runoff saying this is going to be fraud as well. He delivered the Senate to the Democrats basically by just saying that. I mean, I think also the Democrats' work also helped them get in big margins. I'm not saying, let's thank Trump all for it.
Yeah, because the big reason was Republican turnout was down in some of these, the northern parts of Georgia. I believe, Marjorie Taylor Greene's district was, the turnout was, way down. And probably because their representative was the election. I mean, I don't know what she said about it. Did she?
Oh, she just wacky about it. She was like, "It's fraud. Trump is going to be our president in 4 years. Don't worry about it. For the next 4 years, don't worry." She was actually on the Trump train all along. She's the one who was actually putting up impeachment articles tomorrow in the House.
So she was saying, was she saying don't vote? or not specific. Like she was just implying that
She was saying, no. The thing is, she never explicitly said don't vote in the runoff. So I will give you that.